The Bible is a book almost everyone knows. According to the Guinness Book of World Records, it's the best-selling book ever, with between 5 and 7 billion copies sold. Stories like the Ark of Noah and the Battle of David and Goliath are so well known they've become part of our everyday culture. Even people who've never opened the Bible can recount their stories. But what if these stories aren't just myths? What if science is starting to prove that these events truly happened? In today's video, we'll journey through time and explore 9 biblical events that have left even the most skeptical scientists scratching their heads, and trust me, you won't want to miss the last 2. They might just blow your mind. From archaeological digs to scientific studies, we'll uncover the proof that brings these ancient stories to life. Let's jump right in. The Great Flood. Imagine a world so wicked that God decides to start over. That's the story of Noah and the Great Flood from Genesis chapters 6 through 9. God sees the earth filled with corruption and plans to wipe out all life, sparing only Noah and his family. God commands Noah to build an ark and fill it with his family and pairs of every animal. When the ark is ready, the heavens open and rain pours for 40 days and 40 nights. Everything perishes except those in the ark. Finally, the waters recede and Noah's family steps onto dry land to begin life all over again. For centuries, scholars have dismissed the story as a myth. However, in the year of 2000, 2 geologists from Columbia University, Walter Pittman and William Ryan, uncovered shocking evidence beneath the Black Sea. They found a layer of river mud with freshwater mollusk shells, suggesting the Black Sea was once a freshwater lake. At the end of the last ice age, melting ice raised the Mediterranean sea level, causing it to breach the Bosporus Strait, flooding the Black Sea with water more forceful than Niagara Falls. This flood covered 60,000 square miles of land, which could be the basis for the Great Flood story. This theory caught the attention of Robert Ballard, the famed marine scientist who discovered the Titanic. Ballard found an ancient building 300 feet below the Black Sea's surface using sonar. Further exploration revealed stone tools and ceramics, proving people lived there before it flooded. Carbon dating showed that freshwater mollusks died suddenly, supporting the flood theory. Though this evidence points to original flood, the Bible describes a global event, but the Great Flood story isn't unique to the Bible. Cultures worldwide, Mesopotamia, Greece, Rome, the Aztecs, Mayans, and Incans, have similar tales. Each story speaks of a massive flood and a lone survivor on a boat. In recent years, scientists have found evidence of catastrophic floods in regions like China's Yellow River Valley and South America's Central Andean Plateau, confirming these ancient myths. In 2023, researchers in India linked a great flood to the disappearance of the Saraswati River, matching the Hindu myth of Manu. So, does this mean Noah's Ark was real? We know a great flood occurred in the Black Sea region, and global evidence suggests massive floods in various places. How did different cultures across the world have the same story? Could they all have stemmed from a shared ancient event? This mystery invites us to explore further. Number 2. Biblical plagues. In Exodus chapter 7 through 11, the Bible recounts 10 plagues sent by God to compel Pharaoh Ramses II to release the Israelites. Once thought mythical, a 2010 study of Egyptian stalagmites revealed a dramatic climate shift 3,000 years ago, coinciding with Ramses II's reign. The shift caused severe drought, transforming the Nile into a sluggish, muddy stream and setting the stage for the plagues. The first plague, where the Nile turned to blood, could be explained by toxic algae blooms. Consequently, frogs left the polluted water, leading to the second plague. With frogs gone, lice and flies proliferated, aligning with the third and fourth plagues. Insect-borne diseases then decimated livestock, as described in the fifth plague. The sixth plague's boils might have resulted from insect bites or tainted meat. The seventh plague of hailstorms could be linked to the Santorini eruption, whose volcanic ash also created favorable conditions for locusts, causing the eighth plague. This ash could have also caused the ninth plague of darkness. Finally, mycotoxins from contaminated grain likely led to the death of the firstborns, as described in the 10th plague. These scientific findings suggest the biblical plagues were actual events, vividly recorded to highlight divine power. Do these discoveries challenge your perception of ancient biblical narratives and their historical foundations? One thing that is sure for me is that although these things might seem to explain away what might have caused those plagues, but according to the Bible, it was clearly Yahweh, the God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, the God of the Israelites, was guiding and dictating every single one of those plagues. Number 3. Parting the Red Sea. The tale of the Israelites escaping Egypt reaches its climax in Exodus chapter 14. After the 10th plague compels Pharaoh to let them leave, he then quickly changes his mind. Summoning his 600 best chariots, Pharaoh's army soon traps the Israelites between the mountains and the Red Sea. In this dire moment, God commands Moses, "Lift your rod, stretch out your hand over the sea and divide it. The children of Israel shall go on dry ground through the midst of the sea." Moses obeys, and a strong east wind parts the waters, creating walls on either side. As the Israelites cross, the Egyptians pursue, but God instructs Moses to stretch out his hand once more, causing the waters to crash back, drowning the entire Egyptian army. For centuries, skeptics deemed this miraculous event impossible, until 2010 when Carl Drews from the National Center for Atmospheric Research used computer modeling to explore wind set down, a natural phenomenon where strong winds push water aside, creating dry land temporarily. Drews explained the parting of the waters can be understood through fluid dynamics. The wind moves the water in a way that, under physical laws, creates a safe passage with water on two sides and then abruptly allows the water to wash back in. Drews investigated ancient geography, ruling out the Red Sea due to its size and orientation. Instead, his simulations pointed to Lake Tanis around 1250 BC. With steady 63 miles per hour winds from the east, the waters of Lake Tanis could have been pushed to its western shore, creating a temporary land bridge. Scholars note that the original Hebrew text referred to this body of water as the Sea of Reeds, not the Red Sea. This mistranslation from Hebrew to Greek in the 3rd century BC altered the story. Lake Tanis, a shallow lagoon suitable for papyrus reeds, fits the description perfectly. Therefore, the miraculous crossing of the Red Sea could be explained by a natural phenomenon like wind set down, affirming the blend of divine intervention and natural laws in the Exodus story. The day the sun stood still. In Joshua chapter 10, there's a story that almost defies belief. Joshua, leading the Israelites against the Amorites, asks God to make the sun and moon stand still to give his troops more time. The Bible says, "So the sun stood still and the moon stopped till the nation avenged itself on its enemies." For years, many thought this was just a powerful metaphor. However, in 2017, physicist Colin Humphreys and astrophysicist Graham Washington had a different idea. They suggested this wasn't just a story, but an actual astronomical event. They weren't the first to think this way. A century ago, linguist Robert Wilson proposed it might be an eclipse. However, scientists hadn't found evidence of a full eclipse during Joshua's time. Humphreys and Washington took a different approach. They looked for an annular eclipse where the moon covers the sun but leaves a ring of light. They found an annular eclipse on October 30th, 1207 BC using computer simulations. This was a groundbreaking discovery. Many skeptics of theology now believe the biblical account of the sun standing still might be based on a real event, blending faith and having similar tales of science in an incredible way. This finding shows that ancient texts and modern science can sometimes tell the same story. The destruction of Sodom and Gomorrah. According to Genesis chapter 19, Sodom and Gomorrah were two ancient cities destroyed by God for their wickedness. God sent two angels to save the righteous man Lot and his family, raining down burning sulfur to obliterate the cities. Lot's wife looked back and became a pillar of salt. The story has long been considered a religious teaching rather than a historical account. However, in 2006, archaeologist Stephen Collins made a groundbreaking discovery at Tal El Hammam, a large city in the Jordan Valley. Collins uncovered a 5-foot layer of soot containing burned human bones, melted mud brick, and pottery shards turned to glass by intense heat. Analysis revealed this heat was far beyond anything ancient technology could produce. The findings pointed to a cosmic airburst, an event similar to the Tunguska explosion in 1908, where an asteroid exploded above the Earth, causing massive destruction. Researchers concluded that such an airburst had destroyed Tal El Hammam, leaving the city abandoned for 700 years due to the high salt content in the soil which prevented agriculture. The evidence of intense heat, high pressure, and salt aligns remarkably with the biblical account of Sodom and Gomorrah's destruction, suggesting that this ancient tale might be rooted in a real catastrophic event. The Tower of Babel. In Genesis, after the Great Flood, humanity spoke one language and began building a grand city with a tower reaching the heavens, aiming to make a name for themselves. Known as the Tower of Babel, this project angered God, who then confused their language and scattered them across the earth, halting the construction. The story explains the origin of different languages. Historically, many believe the Tower of Babel to be one of the numerous ziggurats in ancient Babylon. In 2017, a significant discovery was made by Andrew George, a professor at the University of London. He examined an ancient clay tablet from Babylon hidden in a private collection for a century. The tablet depicted a 7-tiered ziggurat with a text identifying it as Itemananki Ziggurat Babel, built by King Nebuchadnezzar. The inscription described the construction using bitumen and bricks, echoing the biblical account. Nebuchadnezzar's quote about mobilizing people from distant lands who speak various languages mirrors the Babel story. This evidence suggests that the biblical tale of the Tower of Babel was inspired by the real Itemananki Ziggurat encountered by the Israelites during their Babylonian captivity. David and Goliath. In the first book of Samuel, chapter 17, we find the epic tale of David and Goliath. The story begins with the Israelites and Philistine armies facing off in the Elon Valley. For 40 days, the giant Philistine warrior Goliath steps forward, challenging the Israelites to single combat. No one dares to face him. Why? Because he is massive. The Bible tells us his height was 6 cubits and a span. He had a bronze helmet on his head and wore a coat of scale armor of bronze weighing 5,000 shekels. His spear shaft was like a weaver's rod. Then comes David, a young shepherd boy. He takes up Goliath's challenge, armed only with a sling. Their duel is one of the most famous stories in the Bible. As Goliath moved closer to attack him, David ran quickly toward the battle line to meet him. Reaching into his bag and taking out a stone, he slung it and struck the Philistine on the forehead. The stone sank into his forehead and he fell face down on the ground. David ran and stood over him. He took hold of Goliath's sword and drew it from the sheath. After he killed him, he cut off his head with the sword. For many years, scholars thought the story was just a legend. They doubted King David's existence due to a lack of evidence outside the Bible. That changed in 1993. Archaeologists found a stone slab from the 9th century BC in Israel mentioning the house of David. This discovery proved King David was real. Single combat was common in ancient times, and slings were powerful weapons. If David existed, it's entirely possible he could have defeated a larger opponent with a sling. In 2005, archaeologists unearthed a pottery shard in Gath, Goliath's hometown, with the name Goliath, dating back to the 10th century BC. This find led researchers to reconsider earlier discoveries like the oversized spearheads found in the 1960s. In 2015, things got even more intriguing. Researchers discovered large architectural remains in Gath from Goliath's time. These structures were built with stones much larger than any others in the region. Could Goliath and other giants have lived in Gath and built these enormous buildings? The evidence is compelling, leading more scholars to rethink the historical reality of David and Goliath's story. Adam and Eve. Let's dive into one of the Bible's foundational stories, Adam and Eve. Known to many, regardless of their faith, this tale from Genesis depicts the origins of humanity. God creates Adam and places him in the Garden of Eden. Realizing that it's not good for Adam to be alone, he then formed Eve from Adam's rib. Together, Adam and Eve live in Eden until the serpent persuades them to eat from the forbidden tree of knowledge of good and evil. This act of disobedience led to their expulsion by God from Eden at the beginning of human history. While modern science suggests human evolved over millennia, intriguing evidence hints there might be more to the story of Adam and Eve than mere myth. Right here, we are introduced to the concept of mitochondrial Eve. The scientific idea traces the maternal line of all humans back to one woman, mitochondrial Eve, whose mitochondrial DNA has been passed down through generations. Similarly, all living men can trace their Y chromosome back to one man, known as Y chromosome Adam. Unlike their biblical namesakes, these figures weren't the first humans according to scientists, but are the most recent common ancestors in their respective genetic lines. In 1987, scientists identified mitochondrial Eve as a woman who lived in Africa around 200,000 years ago. Subsequent studies pinpointed Y chromosome Adam to have lived about 100,000 years ago. This led to the belief that they lived millennia apart, never crossing paths. However, in 2013, two independent studies uncovered new DNA sequence variations. Astonishingly, these studies suggested that Y chromosome Adam and mitochondrial Eve might have lived at the same time and in the same region. Fast forward to 2020, biologist Joshua Swamida's proposed a revolutionary idea. He suggested that a couple resembling Adam and Eve could have existed, procreated, and become the universal ancestors of all living humans. Swamidas's key insight was distinguishing between genetic and genealogical ancestry. While you inherit 50% of your DNA from each parent, this percentage halves with each preceding generation. Eventually, some ancestors contribute to your lineage without leaving measurable DNA. Swamidas highlighted in a 2004 study published in Nature, which used computer simulations to determine the most recent common ancestors of all humans. The study concluded that this convergence could have occurred a few thousand years ago. This finding led Swamidas to a profound realization. The evolutionary history of humans and the biblical narrative of Adam and Eve could both hold true. In essence, the scientific concepts of Y chromosome Adam and mitochondrial Eve, along with Swamidas's genealogical perspective, suggest a couple like Adam and Eve could have indeed existed. The story bridges the gap between faith and science, offering a compelling narrative that resonates with believers and skeptics alike. The creation of the universe. The Bible starts with, "In the beginning, God created the heavens and the earth. And God said, 'Let there be light,' and there was light." This aligns intriguingly with the Big Bang Theory, which mainstream science accepts as the universe's origin. The theory states that the universe began from an infinitely small singularity which exploded and expanded faster than light, creating matter that eventually formed everything we know. Initially, this matter couldn't hold light until electrons met nuclei to create atoms, allowing light to shine through. Some see this as clear overlap with the Bible's account. One scientist even claimed the Big Bang shows the universe had a definite starting point, as Genesis describes. The Bible also speaks of the universe being stretched out, matching modern knowledge of its constant expansion. Different verb forms imply both ongoing and completed stretching, paralleling the Big Bang's description of a finished event that ensures continual expansion. Remarkably, ancient biblical writers seemed to understand the universe's creation in ways that modern science only began recognizing recently. How could this be? It's a compelling intersection of faith and science.